this is going to be a streamer pattern that I've been kind of mucking around with a little bit. We're calling it the Gold Ghost. And the reason why I'm calling it that is because there's primarily all gold as we tie this. I've got a size 10 streamer hook here in my vise, and I'm just using some silk just because I had some silk that was more golden color than anything else that I had available. And all I'm doing right at this point, we're going to create a thread base. And I want to be really careful because I want this body to be fairly streamlined. So you'll want to be careful with how many wraps that you're taking. Even though it's a really big hook, it's very easy to get carried away. So I'm going to take that back to about where the barb of the hook is sitting. That barb, I say that every time, just so you know, when I actually fish with this, I will mash that barb down. So we've got ourselves a nice little thread base started here. I'm going to move my thread forward a little bit. And the first material we're going to tie on is going to be just some goose biot in a gold color. I'm just going to find two that are going to serve as our tail. So one thing that you'll notice when you're using a biot is that they have a tendency to have a curve to them. And so I'm going to take these two, they're going to be my tails, and I want them back to back, but splayed away from one another, so we create a nice split tail. And what I found is helpful for me anyway when I'm tying these on is to just go underneath the shank of the hook. And once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and pinch those on either side. I don't want to pull overly tight with my first wrap. I want to get kind of around and then pull more straight up. And the result is kind of what we're looking for, which are, you know, two tails that are splayed out from one another. And not for security purposes, but just for consistency purposes, I'm going to go ahead and keep those butt ends of the biot in place as I take my thread up the shaft of the hook. That just helps me try to keep a more consistent diameter body as we move up. And it's not going to go all the way up to the ice, so we will still have a little bit of a ramp that we're going to need to work with, but for right now, my primary focus is let's just get these biots attached, get some of our other materials attached, and then I'll work a little bit more on that kind of streamlined look. And one thing you can do is you can spin your thread counterclockwise, and it'll actually help you flatten it out a little bit, which will help things lay a little bit flatter. So we're pretty much there with this. You can see I've got a little bit of a drop off there because I don't have any more material there. So I'm going to turn my thread counterclockwise again just to kind of flatten it out and take just as close to touching turns as I can, moving back down. And you will see me from time to time just kind of, I hope you can see me, just spinning that bobbin counterclockwise, just to keep that thread as flat as I possibly can. And when I get back here to where my tails are, I'm going to want to be a little bit gentle. Just so that I don't pull them completely out of place here. But I do need to take some thread wraps back so that we're, you know, close to the bend in the hook, or the hook barb, which is our body measurement. So we're getting pretty close there. You can see I'm going really slow and just being methodical and careful about it. And these tails are not going to be incredibly long. But hopefully you can see. Now we're pretty much there. We've got a nice split out gold colored tail going for us here. The next thing I'm going to turn to is just going to be some large mylar. The mylar that you usually get, this is metallic, is going to be silver on one side and gold on the other side. And because this is being called the golden ghost, I want the gold side. So in order for me to get the gold side to wrap up, I'm actually going to tie this in with the silver side pointing up. And I'm just going to go ahead and draw the material back just a little bit, because I want to maintain, again, that bulk so that we get more consistency from the beginning to the end of the abdomen before we start mucking around with a wing or a hackle, which we will have both of. So we're getting pretty close there. The next ingredient I'm going to tie in is just going to be some medium gold wire. And it's really cool how this wire is going to blend in with the gold. It just creates a really nice body abdomen for us. So I've got that. I'm going to want this tied in more on the lens side of the hook. And I'm just going to go ahead and secure that with a few thread wraps. And just like I usually do, I'm going to go ahead and pull that backwards until it gets to about where I'm going to tie a hackle, a soft hackle in. I'm just going to let my thread carry that over to the lens side of the hook. Hang this on my bobbin cradle. Done this 100 times, hands-free. I'm going to go ahead and grab our mylar now. And I do want to pull this fairly tight just because, well, it's metallic, so it'll withstand that to an extent. Don't go crazy. And then I'm just going to take overlapping wraps of the mylar, moving up the body or the abdomen here. I'm going to just take that right up behind the eye. Go ahead and tighten up my thread a little bit so we can secure this in place. It's really important that you do that because this will just unwind itself. It's one of those kind of materials that if you don't have it secured down, it's going to just come unraveled. So just a couple of wraps on either side. A lot of this is going to be covered up with a nice soft hackle. And so with that, I'll just come on in and we can go ahead and clip that off fairly close. Okay, so turning the vise back to the position I need it. I'm going to take some thread wraps back. Then I'm going to take this gold wire and I want to counter rib this. So I'm going to be wrapping this the opposite direction that I used, when I was putting on the mylar. And you want to try to keep these nice and even spaced as much as you possibly can. You can pull down fairly tight on it and it'll help secure that mylar down and get rid of, you know, some of the bumps and irregularities that are in place from the mylar. And the counter ribbing is just going to help secure that mylar down as well. So bring that back to right about that point where I'm going to tie in my hackle. throw a couple of thread wraps down on either side of that piece of gold wire there. Smooth some things out. Then I can just use my helicopter friction and break off. So for the hackle, we'll just go ahead and turn to my favorite, one of my favorite materials, which is Partridge, Hungarian Partridge. The full skin. This is up where the neck is, right here, and right in here are the feathers that I'm going to want to grab hold of. So I've already got one of those feathers here, and what I'll do when I'm tying is just take a look at the feather and make sure that I don't have any broken ends or anything that's going to make it look sloppy, and this one's looking pretty good. So once I've got that, I'm just going to hold this by the tip, and then I'm just going to strip off the fuzzier fibers from either side. And you want it pretty even on either side. So you're kind of left with something that looks like that. So what I'll do is I'll take my hackle pliers, and I'm going to try really hard to kind of get that locked down right on the center of that stem. So we've got it kind of like that. Wet your fingers a little bit and just stroke some of those fibers back. And once I've got those stroked back, I can go ahead and release that from my hackle plier. And it creates that nice little kind of triangle at the top. I'm going to trim it a little bit, but this is going to be our tie-in point. So you can see we've got that nice and square. It's ready to go. Make sure my thread is about where I want it. And then we're just going to go ahead and tie in at that point. And I actually have got that short enough that I'm not going to need to clip it off. This is just going to secure the hackle to our hook here. And now that I've got it somewhat secure, I'm going to kind of pull those fibers back a little bit so that I can kind of move my thread back to where I want the soft hackle to start. Because we stripped the fibers off, we've got a really nice handle here at the back end, and that's what I'm going to use my hackle pliers for, is to attach to that back end. I'm going to try to stand that as straight up as I possibly can. I'm going to wet my fingers and try to stroke those fibers back towards the bend of the hook. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my first wrap, and they will go sideways on you from time to time. That's okay, we can clean that up. But once I get back to the top here, I'm going to stroke everything back again one more time. So we've got it just about like that. And that's all I want. I really don't want a heavy soft hackle here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and secure this down onto our hook shank, still holding some tension on that back end of it. But after a couple of thread wraps like this, we're pretty safe to be able to release that from our hackle plier. And from there, I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. Just come on in with my scissors and cut this fairly close, especially including these couple of errant fibers. Usually I'll brush those back and use those as I'm tying. But in this case, I want such a sparse hackle that I'll just go ahead and clip those off. So keeping with that gold theme, I've just got some woodduck gold mallard flank. Really huge feather, but we're only going to use part of it. So I'm going to, just like usual, I'm going to kind of pinch this off, holding on to the center of that stem, and we can go ahead and strip off a good chunk of these fibers here, giving us that nice bare stem. I do want this to be really even from side to side. So once I have that pretty even in terms of where those fibers end, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of stroke the feather a little bit to kind of get everything lined up. It's the color I want. I want this to just lay right over the top of my fly here, and I want it to be a little bit shorter than the tails that we've put on. So I'm just going to gingerly kind of hold that in place with a pinch wrap. We'll go ahead and we'll take a wrap or two to get this secure. And after I've taken a couple of wraps, I'm going to kind of let go and see, is this looking the way that I wanted it to look? Is it laying out the way that I wanted it to lay out? Some of them are kind of going around the bottom, which actually is fine on a streamer pattern. But primarily that wing is intended to be going across the top. The other thing that I can see already is that even though I tried really hard, my length is still a little bit longer than I want it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull before I cut it off, just to bring those fibers back a little bit. And once I've got that taken care of, I'm just going to go ahead and take a few more wraps to just cinch this guy down. And then I can come in, we'll just come in with our scissors. I want to cut this off as close as we can. We're going to have a bit of a pronounced head on this, but we're really close to the eye at this point, so I want to be really careful. And most commonly, you don't want to do that. That seems to have happened in the last couple videos that I've shot, where in trimming it nice and close, I trimmed it nice and close enough to cut my thread off. But this is another one of those times that I can kind of show you an example, number one, that we're not all perfect by a long shot, but you can also recover. So I'm not going to just take this hook out of my vise and throw it away and start all over again. I can actually just reattach my thread, and then I'll just come in here. We'll cut off that tag end. So we're now at the point where we can break out our wet finisher. I want most of these wraps to be towards the bend of the hook, because I do want the head here to be thicker towards the back than it is towards the front. Go ahead and release that. Pull it nice and tight. And then I can just grab my cutter. Cut our thread off nice and close. Like so. And with that, there you have it. The gold ghost, the golden ghost. A wonderful pattern. You can certainly see the, our soft hackle creating kind of a beard there over the back. Nice short biot tails, as well as the over wing of the mallard flank, and then underneath it all we have this wonderful gold ribbed body. I'll throw some glossy head cement on this and it'll be finished off. So throw yourself a hook in your vise and give it a go.